Mark Rogers TV with you to start our series rating the top 10 at each position in college football going into 2016. We start at quarterback. Keep in mind before we get going here that we are not rating these players based on their prospectus as NFL players. We are also not rating them strictly on their 2015 performance, but projecting ahead to 2016. Also, based on the quarterbacks here, we're not just rating them as passers, but as complete quarterbacks who have to use their legs to move the football, also use their knowledge of the game and manage the game and make plays in the clutch. Also, let's keep into mind that we're not just talking about the best statistical players. So, for example, if Tom Brady in the NFL went to a lesser team, his stats would decline, but he is still the same quarterback. So, supporting cast is not factoring into this. These are the players I consider 1 through 10 at quarterback heading into this fall. Let's start at number 10 at Texas Tech with Patrick Mahomes. We first saw him on the national scene against Baylor in the finale of 2014 when he hit up the Bears, who were hoping for a college football playoff appearance, hit up Baylor for 598 yards and 6 touchdowns, and it continued into 2015 when he brought the Red Raiders back to postseason play. 63% passer, 4,700 yards, 36 touchdowns, 15 picks. He ran for 10 touchdowns, and we saw that escapability in the bowl game against LSU. Even though Texas Tech got throttled 56-27, it was close most of the way, and Mahomes carried the offense on his back. He repeatedly escaped future NFL defenders' grasp to make plays, throw on the run, get the job done. He made it to spring football this year for the first time in his career because he used to play baseball. He quit the baseball team. He got in some spring practice. Expect Patrick Mahomes to be even better in 2016 as our number 10 quarterback in college football. All right, I've got a real dilemma on my hands at number 9 because my quarterback may not even be the starter for his team. Notre Dame, Brian Kelly, needs to make a decision between Deshaun Kaiser and Malik Zaire. I'm going with Kaiser here. Based on past performance, he's got more of a track record, and I really like what I saw in 2015. 63% passer. He threw for 21 touchdowns. He ran for 10. He threw 10 interceptions against a brutal schedule. Consider what Deshaun Kaiser got thrown into. Zaire went down on the road at Virginia. Not a great team, but a solid defense. Kaiser had to bring them back in the fourth quarter. They were down with a $1:30 to play. He led them all the way down the field and threw that beautiful rainbow touchdown pass to Will Fuller to pull out the win for the Irish. He played extremely well at Stanford. Consider if the defense would have had a stop, Kaiser led the game-winning drive with less than 30 seconds left to play at Stanford. He also had the impressive performance against Ohio State because consider the personnel around him at that point. Notre Dame was beat up, and Kaiser kept them in range against the Buckeyes and almost led a comeback at Clemson against the nation's number 1 team, down big in the fourth quarter. He put up the points, couldn't get the 2-point conversion to try to force the game into overtime. Deshaun Kaiser I've got over Malik Zaire at number 9. All right, we go outside the Power 5 at number 8 with Greg Ward Jr., 67% completion percentage, 17 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, and can he get the job done in the running game? 1,100 yards and 21 rushing touchdowns. We saw him twice against Power 5 competition and big-time defenses in Louisville and Florida State in the Peach Bowl. 2 victories for the Cougars, and especially against Louisville, and one of the better defensive fronts in college football. Ward hit him up for 70% completion percentage, 3 touchdowns, and he played well against Florida State in a romp for the Cougars there. Consider the one game that they lost. He only threw 4 passes against UConn, had to leave the game, and they were upset by the Huskies 20-17. Otherwise, Houston had a claim for a college football playoff. Greg Ward Jr. coming into 2016, I've got him rated at number 8. All right, let's go to the Big 12 at number 7 and Baker Mayfield of Oklahoma. The stats were sterling, 68%, and also much to do with Sterling Shepard playing wide receiver. 3,700 yards, 36 touchdowns, 7 picks, 7 rushing touchdowns. He ran it, he threw it, he made plays out of nothing. and really got halted in the college football playoff game against Clemson, where he was running for his life and finally faced defensive ends that were too fast and too athletic for him to evade. And those were really the three poor games that Baker Mayfield had. Against TCU, even though the Sooners won it by 1, Trevon Boykin out of the game. Mayfield only 9 for 20 in that game. Didn't play particularly well against Clemson. Again, the pass rush had a ton to do with that. Played horribly for 3.5 quarters at Knoxville. Credit him for the comeback win and the overtime play, but didn't play well at Tennessee again. So he disappeared way too many times for him to break into the top 3 or 4 for me. Mayfield at number 7. All right, let's go down to the ACC and Brad Kaaya at Miami, number 6 quarterback on our list. 59% completion percentage, 26 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. Behind one of the worst pass blocking lines for a good team in college football. The superb game against Florida State in a loss when Dalvin Cook took over in the fourth quarter. Kaaya hit up the Seminoles for 405 yards, 3 touchdowns, and no interceptions. He's got astute knowledge of the game. Mark Richt has raved about working with Brad Kaaya since he arrived on campus, his knowledge of football in general, and then his ability to pick up a new playbook and adapt to it and learn it very quickly and tell people where they need to be on the field, veterans who have more experience than he does coming into his junior season. Would like to see a few more athletic plays out of his feet. He has to get better working his way in the pocket and getting outside the pocket because of the porous offensive line. And also Brad Kaaya, not his fault necessarily, but we would love to see him win some big games at the U. All right, let's head into the top 5 and let's go to a true sophomore in Josh Rosen at UCLA. 23 touchdowns, 11 picks. He threw for 60% completion percentage and almost 3,700 yards as a true freshman. Came out of the gate at the Rose Bowl against Virginia and hit up the Cavaliers for 351 yards, no picks, 3 touchdown passes. But consider the effort 2 weeks later against BYU. He played poorly, threw 3 interceptions, only finished with 106 yards, but trailing in the fourth quarter, last drive of the game, drove the ball down the field for the Bruins, won the game against BYU as a true freshman in game number 3. Impressive was his win, or should have been win, against Washington State at the Rose Bowl. He led the Bruins down the field. They were down, got the touchdown with his legs on a 35-yard run against safeties and defensive backs, showed his speed and athleticism that we didn't see earlier out of Josh Rosen, only to have Luke Falk bring back the Cougars in the final 30 seconds. Josh Rosen, UCLA, I've got him at number 5. It's going to be interesting to see what he has for Texas A&M and probably the most hostile environment he will face in his collegiate career to date in game number 1 at Kyle Field. All right, at number 4, we go to Ole Miss and Chad Kelly, the Clemson transfer, hit up the SEC for 4,000 yards, 31 touchdowns, 13 picks, 65% thrower. Okay, the Rebels lost 3 games. He played well in all the losses. He threw for 3 touchdowns and no picks against Arkansas. He got another win against Alabama when he hit up the Tide in Tuscaloosa for 3 touchdowns and no turnovers. Had a 4-touchdown game in the Sugar Bowl. And consider this, the Rebels didn't run it well. He ran it. He led the team in rushing and had 10 rushing touchdowns. Going to be very interesting this fall to see Chad Kelly's performance without Laquan Treadwell and without Laramie Tunsil at left tackle, and probably still a marginal running game for Ole Miss. The offense is on his shoulders. We've got Chad Kelly rated at number 4. All right, we go out to Washington State for number 3 quarterback Luke Falk, who throws up the video game numbers. 69% completion percentage, 4,600 yards, 38 touchdowns, 8 picks. Is he a system quarterback? Yes, to an extent. Everybody seems to thrive in Mike Leach's system. But does Washington State go 9-4 under other quarterbacks? No, they don't. And consider what Washington State didn't do against Washington in the season finale without Luke Falk. They lost 45-10. Get Falk back in the lineup for the Hurricanes in the postseason, and he wins the Sun Bowl. Luke Falk, extremely quick release, knows where to throw the football, knows where to find the right guys, and and should have another outstanding year. Check out the numbers for Luke Falk game to game, and in particular, what he did against UCLA, Stanford, in what could have been an upset. So consider this. If Washington State doesn't miss a field goal on the last drive against Stanford, Luke Falk takes Washington State, who was 3-9 the year before, to the Rose Bowl in place of Stanford. Almost pulled off that upset against the Cardinal. Okay, we go to number 2, and a guy that if he went strictly by 2015 stats, he wouldn't be in the top 10. JT Barrett at Ohio State. We know the situation this time last year, battling with Cardale Jones for the number 1 spot. Urban Meyer didn't listen to me. He went with Cardale Jones as the starter. Jones didn't play well. The Buckeyes did go undefeated the first 10 games of the year. But Barrett was inserted after game 8, lit up Rutgers, and moved the Buckeyes extremely well after that. Threw for just about 1,000 yards, 11 touchdowns, 11 rushing touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Check out the performances in particular once he got into the flow of the offense against Michigan and against Notre Dame. The Buckeyes rolled those 2 opponents with 42 and 45 points, respectively. Go back a season, 2014. JT Barrett broke the all-time Big Ten touchdown record of Drew Brees with 45 total touchdowns, 34 passing, 11 rushing. He is going to light it up. Even with a supporting cast that is extremely green, JT Barrett going to put up big numbers for the Buckeyes this year in 2016. He's got poise. He has a good enough arm. He's athletic, can rack up tons of yardage on the ground, and he anticipates throws, and he's extremely accurate. All right, we go to the consensus number 1. I don't think there's a debate here. For one of the few times you're going to see a consensus number 1 that will receive little argument, I think. Clemson quarterback Deshaun Watson came in as a freshman, performed well, got hurt a couple times, still had 14 touchdowns and 2 picks as a freshman. And then off the charts performance in leading Clemson to the national title game last year. 35 touchdowns passing, 12 rushing, 13 interceptions, threw for 4,000 yards, threw at a 68% clip. And down the stretch against North Carolina, Oklahoma, and Alabama, he was exceptional. Almost pulled off the upset against Alabama in the national championship game with 405 yards, 478 total offense, and the 4 touchdowns in the 45-40 loss. Deshaun Watson may not be the Heisman winner this year, and I didn't vote for him or did not promote him as a Heisman winner last year, but I do think he's the most important player in college football because consider the quarterback position. Deshaun Watson is by a decent margin the best quarterback in college football. Okay, we got Mahomes at 10, Kaiser at 9, Ward at 8, Mayfield at 7, Kaaya at 6, Rosen at 5, Kelly at 4, Falk at 3, Barrett 2, and Watson 1. That's our top 10 quarterbacks heading into 2016. Would love to hear from you now on Mark Rogers TV.